Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm David Duarte, your host for Culture Before Content. Whether you're watching live or catching a replay, I am so glad you are here. At Music for All and within the Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. And none of this happens without support, and we're incredibly grateful to Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for helping us bring this mission to life. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching live, now's your chance to be a part of the conversation. Feel free to drop a comment, whether it's a shout out, a question, or something that stands out to you. Jump in and be a part of that conversation. But if you're catching us if you're catching us on the replay, you can watch the full episode anytime, which is perfect for revisiting those key moments or watching at your own pace. And we have audio only versions. Those drop on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other major platforms every Monday, so you can stay connected wherever you are. For all the latest episodes and past conversations, visit us at musicforall.org/podcast. It's your go-to destination for everything culture before content. Well, let's talk about last week. Last week was an exciting time. We had one of my dear friends, Dr. Nola Jones, who reflected on creating a healthy learning environment where student growth, emotional safety, and mentorship takes priority over the outcomes. She shared how listening to students and professional musicians has been central to meaningful connection and stylistic development. Dr. Jones spoke about building community, the emotional value of shared musical experiences, teaching self-care, and how generosity and gratitude have shaped her leadership philosophy. She highlighted the unfiltered joy music brings to her and her students and encourages directors to embrace the process over the product. Is that not the truth? And she celebrates her growth through performance. Anyway, we talked about the Sweetwater Directors Academy, and just a reminder to invite you and all music educators to join us at the Sweetwater Director Academy this summer. It is a powerful place to learn, grow, and connect with leaders shaping the future of music education. And it will be nice to meet so many of you that I have never met. It'll be great. All right. Let's get on to this week. Always so fun. Weather permitting. You never know. We have Dr. Trae Blanco, a native of New Mexico, who was the director of bands at Butler University. His cultural background is deeply rooted in the rich music traditions of the American Southwest, which have significantly influenced his approach to music education and conducting. Dr. Blanco emphasizes the importance of cultural awareness and inclusivity in his teaching, fostering environments where diverse musical perspectives are valued and explored. His commitment to integrating cultural elements into music education enriches the learning experience and broadens students' understanding of global music traditions. Well, without any further ado, because you never know how the weather's going to be, please welcome to the show, Dr. Trae Blanco.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for
Hey,
having me
welcome to
today.
the show. Oh my gosh,
for-
thank you. Well, thanks for letting the weather let you come today. I know it's always a little bit of panic sometimes when you live in the Midwest.
Exactly.
So how is the weather right now? Just curiously.
It's great. It's great. I was just going to say, for anyone who's watching live, I hope your internet connection is as stable or more stable than mine. But it's going so far. So far, all is good. We had a little bit of rain earlier, but I think it was a little bit of an overstatement. But I'm happy to be here today, and just a little bit of rain outside. Seems like we're going to be all right.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Because all right, well, why don't you start with, let's just do an introduction. Who is Dr. Trae Blanco? Maybe a little bit about you and your community that you serve and what you believe in, and tell us who you are.
Absolutely. So yeah, a little bit about me. I started playing the clarinet in middle school band. I'll never forget. I mean, I grew up playing guitar and piano. My grandma started me on guitar, and I would sing when I was a little kid. Guitar was bigger than me. And that sort of began this love for music and enjoying time spending with people. But I started on the clarinet in middle school band. And in 8th grade, I'll never forget, my middle school band director said, "We need one more person to cover a mallet percussion part. Trae, you play the piano. I think you could cover this. Could you do it?" And I think that might have been the last time I opened my clarinet case. It was awesome. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I just kind of stayed there. And so I studied percussion as an undergrad degree in music education at New Mexico State University. Had incredible teachers. Fred Bugby, shout out to Fred Bugby, who's now the department chair at New Mexico State, took me as like a small town kid growing up as a freshman music major, and really helped me find what musicianship was and musicality was. And forever grateful for him. I get to see him about once a year when I go back there, and that's always really great. So that was that. And then I taught high school band in New Mexico. I loved it. I taught at Las Cruces High School from the fall of 2008 until the spring of 2012. Super amazing time, a wonderful job in a great city with lots of music making. At the time, there were 3 high schools. A 4th one opened while I was teaching there. Had some amazing colleagues who I've kept in touch with over the years. And so it's great. And after teaching, I met my wife, and she was going to grad school. And I thought, oh, that seems like a good thing. So I went to grad school, and I knew I was really interested in conducting. I'm sure we'll loop back at some point about kind of where that came from too. But I was just really interested in conducting and what happens on the podium and why we do what we do. So applied to grad school, and I just told the story over the past weekend. In complete naivete, I just applied to 2 schools that I heard were pretty good. I applied to Cincinnati Conservatory and the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music, and thought, no, I'll go to one of those, not knowing what I know now, the insane amount of competitive application process that is. So by all things luck, I got into Indiana, and I went to school there, did my master's, and studied with Steve Pratt, Jeff Gershman, who was also there. Just some really amazing teachers. Pete Mixa in the music education area really helped shape my thoughts about the practicality of why we do what we do, and Lissa May, and an amazing time. And then while I was there, my teacher, Steve Pratt, pulled me in his office one day during a lesson, and he said, so I think you should think about doing a doctorate. And at that time, I just thought I was going to go back and I wanted to I mean, for anyone that's probably watching this and I've had the great opportunity to work with, I love working with high school students. I adore it. The energy is over the top, and it's just great. It's great fun. Our music majors at the university level are incredible students. They are living in a world where they're learning how to teach, and they are just being bombarded by music. And so sometimes we get like a little bit lost in that. We're like, ugh, feels like work, right? Whereas in high school, these students are they love music, so they're still playing. So they're both wonderful age groups, but I really enjoyed that and thought that's what I would go back to do. And Mr. Pratt said, I think you should think about it. And so I started looking at doctoral programs. I met Gary Hill at Arizona State University. I had some family in Arizona, and Kelsey and I thought that would be a really great fit. Everything else was kind of more north. And she said, I'll love you forever, but not with that much snow. So we decided that we would stay a little bit warmer climate. So we moved to Arizona State, to Phoenix, and lived there for 2 years. And that's where I finished my formative education. I mean, I feel like every day I'm learning. I have the opportunity here in Indianapolis. For many of the folks that know a lot about our city and our state, there's an unbelievable amount of incredible teachers in this area. Some still teaching, some retired, some consulting, and people are constantly traveling in and out of here to do work. Your guest last week, Dr. Jones, she's here as chief judge for many events for the Music for All's, Bands of America things. She's here in the summer for the Directors Academy and the newly titled Summer Band Camp. And she's a mentor to just a ton of teachers here. So to be in a band room and walk in to just see a friend and maybe think I'm working with a freshman band, and there's Nola Jones or Randy Greenwell, or there's Richard Salcedo, or you just kind of walk into these people, and I still feel like I'm learning. I'm having an opportunity to observe some master teachers and just get to kind of keep those wheels turning. Oh, I like this, right? I think we all know that all great art is borrowed. I think the word is actually stolen, but I think I'd prefer to use borrowed.
I like borrowed. I think I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, I think all great teachers we've borrowed stuff from everyone. I have a little bit of what I've learned from Dr. Bugby, and some from my undergrad wind ensemble conductor and symphonic band conductor, and Mr. Pratt and Gary Hill and all these other people that I had the opportunity to observe. So it's a little bit about me and kind of how I got to where I'm doing what I'm doing. Butler's my 3rd collegiate teaching job. I was previously at Murray State, where I followed Dennis Johnson after what I believe is 33 years there. Tremendous conductor. Dennis is the past president of the World Association for Symphonic Bands and Ensembles, a member of the American Bandmasters Association. He was tremendous to me while I was there, an absolute gifted musician. And in a small town, where you don't have the opportunity to walk into so many run into so many master teachers because it's just a smaller area. Dennis was a huge mentor to me. I felt kind of like I was doing a postdoc in many ways when I would say, "Hey, I have a question about this. Can we get coffee and talk about it?" So that was great. And before that, I followed Peter Martin, who was at the University of Southern Maine for, I think, 36 years. He built that program from the ground up. Pretty wild. And Bob Gutrewski here at Butler University was here for a long time, who was followed by Mike Colburn of the Marine Band. Mike was my predecessor here for 7 years. And so I've just been really lucky to work in a lot of places where there's really high quality music making happening, and having the opportunity to sort of continue learning, both from mentors and teachers, but also from students. I learn. We have undergraduate and graduate students, and I'm constantly amazed by the things that they bring to me with questions, and it's a learning curve. I'm still learning.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my comments that I keep making. Is the older I get, the less I know, and it's just amazing to me. After 35 years of teaching, I still every day go to work, and I'm excited to learn from my students because they're kind of what makes it all tick. And I think that's, I hate to say this, this is my first weekend of spring break. So this is like that ultimate weekend where life is super good. But it's unique to me that I get to go every day to a job that I love, and I am still learning every day. And I'm still trying to make those changes, which I think we'll talk about some of those cultural things here coming up. But every day is a treat to be in front of kids, I think.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm constantly amazed that this is what I get to do. Like, I get up in the morning, get my kids ready for school, and get them out the door with my wife. And then it's like, whoa, this is my job. Like, this is what I'm doing. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And to think, the other thing I think that's unique about the education profession is we morph, and sometimes some of us do semesters, some of us do trimesters, but we get to have two separate sets. We get to have the whole, the teaching part of it, and then we have the summer to either grow, rest, or do something completely different, but still make that a part of who we are culturally. To bring that stuff. That's why I said when you talked about running into Nola Jones, I'll never forget the impact that woman has had on my life. She is just a dynamo, and I cannot believe the amount of energy that woman has at any turn. It does not matter whether it's 7 a.m, 2 o'clock. She is a dynamo from the word go.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, that's the great thing. You were talking about the calendar, that's the great thing that I love about my job. So it sort of affords me the opportunity to do multiple types of things. And for anyone that knows me, or that I've had the opportunity to get to know and work with, knows that I get really focused in on the thing that's at hand. Like, I really have to make sure that I'm doing what I'm doing, to the max of my ability, but I also love to do lots of different things. So during the school year, I teach here at Butler University. I get to work with incredible students. Like I said, we've got students from all over the country, from Indiana, from Texas, Illinois, all over the place. My first semester here, one of our horn players was a study abroad student from Germany who had never played in a large ensemble before in her whole life, but was a tremendous horn player. Anyways, so a lot of opportunities there. But then in the summer, yeah, I have an opportunity to also just retreat, hang out, spend a lot of time with my kids, 100% dad. That's probably the primary reason why I do what I do now. I public school teaching, as you know, I mean, it's all consuming. The schedule is just so intense. And I knew that my wife and we knew we wanted to have kids, and I wanted to really be there. I wanted to be able to make that choice and not have to, there's a lot to balance there. And I have so much respect for people that do it. I mean, it's unbelievable. Talk about building culture and putting in the time to make that work. So my schedule here allows me for the summer to sort of do whatever it is else that I want to do. So I spend about 3 weeks every summer in Twin Lake, Michigan at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp. Where I lead a camper ensemble or the faculty ensemble, kind of whatever. I'm game for whatever. Just put me in, coach. So I love doing that. It's an opportunity to stay connected with, especially the younger players. There's the first 3 summers I was there, I did the freshman non-audition band, and I loved it. I mean, I was coming from, we were doing music for Prague at the last concert at Murray State, and 3 weeks, a month later, I was in the woods conducting, grade 2, grade 3, and I love it. I mean, it's just so much fun. So I spent some time there, I've just started working with a group this coming summer, which I'm really excited about. Anyone who's familiar with Music for All knows the name Tony Maiello, who's just, he's been at George Mason University for a long time, amazing conductor. He's conducted everyone's all-state band. If you were in an all-state band in the late 80s, or you were in an all-state band in 2019, like someone in your family has had Tony Maiello as their all-state band conductor. He's been conducting this group up in Maine, where I first taught my first college teaching job, called the Acadia Wind Ensemble. And it's just a group of community musicians and teachers that love to play. They're very good. And they get together for a I guess it's a really short weekend. They play a Thursday night rehearsal, an all-day Friday, and they play a Friday night concert of like an hours long of your world's favorite band music, a Rossini overture, some standard lit, some pop things. And so I'm going to start working with that group this year. Tony's decided that he's going to retire and spend a little more time doing other things. So I'm grateful for that. That's another different type of, squirrel opportunity for me in the summer. And then maybe the most exciting thing is that this coming summer, Music for All has had they have lots of different partner companies, but Music Travel Consultants has a Musicians Abroad, an arm branch that takes students from across the country. A lot of states have these sort of statewide honor groups. It used to be called like ambassadors. I think a lot of states called them like the Arizona ambassadors. Well, that's morphed into this new venture through Musicians Abroad. And knowing Scott McCormick for as long as I have, thankfully, he extended an invitation to work with a couple of those groups this summer. So this summer will be 2 different groups. Indiana's sending a group, and Arizona's sending a group. And so they're going to go across Europe. They'll play concerts in Switzerland, in Versailles, in Paris, and in Germany. And so I'm going to go and spend 2 weeks sort of jumping around with them and doing concerts, and a totally different rep. I mean, it's summer groups. We're touring Americana, right? We're not playing the Hindemith Symphony, right? No one in Versailles is walking up to an outdoor concert going, I'm not going to stay. They're not playing the Hindemith, right? So I love the piece to death, but finding the right repertoire is important, which hopefully we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think those are all opportunities to do different types of work, all centered around music making with different ability levels, different age groups. And I think, sometimes we get caught up in conversations I have with people about a word that I hate is when someone tells me, they moved up to the high school, like someone who's a middle school band director. Oh, they moved up. What? Well, they just moved over. Like, I didn't move up to college teaching. My high school band played repertoire my last year that I really had to work at teaching in my first couple of years of college, because you just make these changes in your career, and you just have to figure it out. So I have a hard time with the word up, right? They moved up. And I think we are all just moving around, right? We're just trying to find groups that we work with. And whether I'm conducting, Jennifer Higdon's rhythm stand and we're tapping pencils on the stand, I'm pushing, 7th, 8th grade, freshman honor band. I'm pushing them in the same way that I would, an adult group this summer when we're looking at, Hounds of Spring, Alfred Reed. I mean, it's all approached in the same way, trying to get us all to sort of focus our minds and our ideas on how do we make this thing possible, and knowing that the end result will be a different piece of music. It'll be a different, we have grade levels, right? It'll be a different grade level of repertoire, but the output is the experience of all the students, of all the adults, of all the fill in the blank, whoever you're working with, right? How do we get them to that? Because at the end of the day, it's a concert hall and we all turn the lights off, whether you're playing grade 5 or grade 2. I mean, it's all kind of the end result is the same. So I think for me, I'm always focused on how do we do the right thing along the way to make sure that students or adults are really engaged. So
well, I think that is unique from you, because, I'm thinking of talking to all the people that I've talked to all over the country. It comes down to what is your focus. I don't mean you personally. I mean, what your focus is. And it's really refreshing to listen to you as a college band director focusing on the students. And it's not that people aren't, it's just that, a lot of times everyone has a different agenda. And I think, what that agenda is, it might be influenced by how we were brought up and what we want to offer back to the world. And it's funny you say move up, move down, because I moved down from administration to go back into the classroom, and I didn't move down. I moved up. I got a way better, again, it goes
you moved way up.
I way up. I know the kids listen way better than the adults. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But maybe that
Yeah.
that can lead us into the culture of band, because I think that's
Sure.
what I'm hearing from you. Is I can hear your energy, I can hear that thought process, and I think that's what we want to learn from everybody is, what is the culture of band for you, whether it's the rehearsal or the music, and we can start the conversation there and we get the repertoire. I love talking these things, but let's just
Sure.
start about the culture of the band itself, like maybe just the process that you have or beliefs that you have, what makes a band just to even start out.
Sure. I think actually kind of going back in my journey in the middle, at the end of my undergraduate degree, I knew I wanted to go to grad school then. I thought I would go right after. Applied to a couple of schools. I got into a conducting program that I was really excited about. Was really energized. And I was really happy because I was going to have an opportunity to both wind and orchestral. I grew up playing in a youth orchestra, and I thought, oh, that would be really cool. Maybe that's what I want to do. And so as I started applying for this teaching job and I got it, I had to call this teacher and tell them, I wasn't coming after all. And here's why. And I was really nervous about it, actually. And my cooperating teacher at the time, who had kind of mentored me through this job application process, was like, I think you're going to find the opposite. I think they're going to be really happy for you. I was, oh, okay. So I called, and this is the days. I mean, I wasn't going to send this in an email, and you didn't have FaceTime or like Zoom. I mean, Skype was the thing, but it wasn't even very good. And so so I just remember calling him and saying, here's the deal. I know it's late. It's like end of April. I had accepted this assistantship, but I think I need to learn a little bit more before I go back to school. He was super gracious. And I always talk about this moment because that was a moment that I think could have completely changed the way my career has unfolded. And I don't know if for the better or for the worse, but I don't want to imagine I don't want to imagine what it was, because what I have right now is really incredible. I'm really grateful for that. So that taught me that I was going to hang out in the band world a little bit longer. And what I figured out was that actually we kind of encompass everything. We have repertoire from Tillman Susano's The Dance Array that we have an arrangement for band, but the original is really for some random collection of instruments that we can't make out because the manuscript is so old. But that's a band piece. The Mozart Serenade is a band piece. I'll go back to it. Jennifer Higdon's Rhythm Stand, where we play wind instruments and we also tap on a music stand with a pencil, is a band piece. The Hindemus Symphony is a band piece. Erica Savano's Symphony in Blue and Gold is a band piece. So for me, one of the things that I think I'm probably most interested with the repertoire and like how it structures what it is that we do, what we do at Butler, for example, because that's where I'm at right now. I can speak to that more specifically, is that I try to play a pretty wide variety of music. I don't remember who told me this, but I always repeat it, that a concert should not be like a buffet. Like you can't, no one ever left a buffet feeling good about themselves, right? Like after your fourth trip, into the second hour of a concert, no one has ever said, wow, I wish this was still going, right? I think we have to be really cautionary about how we introduce our music. And so I try and play, at Butler, every concert, we play about 2 a semester, sometimes 3, just kind of depends how the rotation goes. I try and play about 50 to 55 minutes of music that spans a pretty wide variety. Sometimes I don't get a piece from Renaissance all the way to contemporary, but I try and look at the buffet rather, instead of by concert, by year. So I'm looking at the end of this year right now. We're moving into our last concert. And one of the things that I always kind of go back to is, okay, the students that are graduating this year, did they play a piece from this century? Did they play something that was manuscript? Did they play something that was below, right? There's the word again, below
Yep.
our grade level, so that we could give a really quality performance to music educators and directors that come to our concerts, of a piece that I think that other people should play. We try and play a lot of stuff like that. I don't play just like off the wall, over the top, really difficult music. We do some of it. I mean, it's part of my job too, to give the students that sort of experience, but we also do a lot of stuff that I think people can wrap their minds around, or that I think needs a second performance. We did a premiere by Latin Grammy composer Juan Pablo Contreras, that I was part of the commissioning consortium for, called La Silla, which in the translation La Silla means the chair, but it wasn't really about that. It was more like the saddle. Like it was kind of a concert Wild West opener. And we played that piece we gave 5 performances of that piece in the semester. And it was because it was brand new and I really believed it and I thought that more people should play it. And of all the places we played that, we played one in Chicago on a tour, one in St. Louis, a collage concert here at Butler, and then 2 performances in like the same week of concerts here. And several people bought that piece afterwards. It's like a grade 4 fanfare opener. Juan Pablo wrote to me and said, "Hey, I have several people in the state of Indiana that just ordered this piece." And I felt really good about that because I think that we all have to kind of find the music that we really believe in, the composers we believe in, and really just go for it and promote them. So that's kind of, the thing that really gets me thoughtful. My summertime, my squirrel moments where I'm between conducting ensembles and I don't have an outlet like this. I mean, you can probably tell, Dave, from our short time knowing each other, I could talk to someone about band for like 65 hours. We could just keep going days.
That's why we're here. We can have 65 episodes.
But in those breaks between concerts in the summer, I love thinking about what is it, the repertoire that we have, a collection of wind instruments, right? That's really what the ultimate definition is of band, right? A collection of wind, brass, percussion instruments, of how many we don't know. I mean, this is, in the 70s, the 1970s, the Music Educators National Conference was really trying to come together for a national instrumentation, a standard of instrumentation so composers knew what to write for. And there's sort of 2 streams of thought out of that. If people knew what they were writing for, maybe they would write more music. Or for anyone who's a band director and you've studied how many staves are on that score, can most of these composers writing in the 20th century for orchestras are writing 5 string parts and then 8 wind instruments doubled, maybe timpani, probably not a lot of percussion, right? So when we tell them there's 37 staffs you have to write from, and there's like 11 transpositions, people don't want to write for that. They're terrified. So, I think for me, any collection of instruments sort of counts. We do pieces by Gabrielli that are for brass only. Lightning. I hope that doesn't destroy our connection here. But we do Gabrielli music. I've done Mozart. I've done Shostakovich transcriptions. The Galop or the folk dances are great.
Mm-hmm.
I've done. We've done a lot of different types of repertoire. And when I do honor bands, I try and do the same thing. I have a couple composers' music who I just adore. I think Carol Britton Chambers is one of the most fantastic orchestrators of band music of all time, regardless of grade level. I've never seen a piece of music of hers that I've done that I've had to work at it. Where it just lies well. It works great for students of all ability levels. I think there's a really incredible turn in the repertoire happening right now to engage with students coming out of COVID, like things that are less classical. Like not everything has to be classical music. We don't have to say like our 8th grade band has to play overture form everything, and it has to be by someone, a piece of music that we've all played, time and time again. And not there's anything wrong with that. I'll play the Persichetti Divertimento all day long. But composers like Kataj Cobley and Kevin Day just gave a presentation along with a couple other colleagues this past weekend at CBDNA called, I forget the first, something dope flow. Like it was all about incorporating different types of voices and into composition and for our students. And I think that that's important. We've done music with electronics of all types, live electronics, pre-recorded things. I think that there's the thing about band is that we have so much repertoire. The hardest part for us is to try and find a way to create expectations for our listeners. Not everybody's playing concerts for just moms and dads. Some people have to sell tickets. Some groups have to bring people in for a concert. Community bands, for example, right? They don't want to play for nobody. And they're not playing for Sally and Billy's mom and dad and their entire cul-de-sac of friends that they brought, right? They're looking for ways to bring people in. And so I think finding that balance is really critical. And I'm always looking to make sure that whatever program we're playing, there's something on it that I think everyone in the ensemble can relate to or connect to. Right now we're doing a piece in the Butler Wind Ensemble right now. I have a trumpet player who's incredible, a student who's marching with the troopers this summer. I have several students who have aged out of SCV, Bluecoats. There's a lot of students that do rhythm, spring WGI percussion, and so I'm always looking for something like, how do I keep them, how do I make what they do in the summer connect to what we do? And so we're really lucky at Butler. We have an alum who's no stranger to the music education world or composing world, Evan Van Doren. Evan is a terrific composer on Robert W. Smith's RWS company, and he wrote this amazing fanfare called look at me, Horizons Untold. No, sorry, I shouldn't speak about titles without looking at scores, but we're doing that right now. It's a 2-minute fun fanfare, and it opens the concert. He's an alum. It's great to feature composer connections like that, and it connects to the students in a lot of different ways. So, and it's a composer who's about my age, someone who's relatively early on in their career. We're playing a piece by that includes string quartet. My colleagues at the university are playing on a piece by a Jewish exiled composer that's amazing, Erwin Schulhoff, this great piece. We're doing a piece by Lindsay Bronenkamp, a Michigan grad, called Tarot, that involves like kind of connection to tarot magic, but not really. It's not like that. It's just sort of a storyline. It's amazing. And then we're closing the piece by Mike Shelley, one of our composition faculty. And that's just like the short buffet of this concert. If we got into the weeds and I pulled up my Excel sheet that I've kept, David, since 2008, of all the concerts and repertoire planning that I like add stuff to when I hear a great piece. That would be, I could tell you more about that, but I think for me, the big thing is it's just we're playing music that's collections of instruments, wind, brass, percussion. And at the heart of it all, I want to make sure that what I play connects to not just the students of like, am I playing something that looks like each of them or sounds like each of them or includes each of them, but also that they might be interested in. I have a hard time. I'm trying to think over the last couple of years. My first year at Butler, I had a senior bassoon student who was graduating, who had not who was doing performance and had not played the Gounod Petite Symphony, which is like a big chamber piece, like one of the most popular chamber pieces of all times. And I was like, oh my God, I have to change the program. I had planned all this stuff for the whole year. And I was like, I have to change the program on this concert because the student cannot graduate having not playing this piece. Like I felt like I had to help them with this. And so those are kind of the programming decisions that I'm thinking about.
Oh, we got here. Speaking of,
Dr. G.
Dr.
G. Speaking of great teachers, my goodness.
Oh yeah, I used her recording of IO with my ensemble. We just played that last week. Was our last performance of IO. We awesome. Survived Melissa Gustafson Hines. It was great.
She's incredible.
She's great. And again, it's all these connections. I always say, like, we always find out that we all know a lot of the same people. Like, Gary Hill's one of my all-time favorite people. And then Melissa Gustafson Hines. We had Steve Steele was our common band director that we had since.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was my band director in Arizona, not in Illinois.
Not Illinois State. Yeah.
Nope. No, you're way too nice, and you're way too talented for all the people. A lot of people I know, man, just so amazing talent. But let me ask you this question, because it's funny because when we start talking repertoire, this goes back to a conversation I had in college. I was not a jazz band person, somehow I became a jazz band person. But you talked about this, and I always like to speak about moments because I really believe life is a series of like top 10 moments that shape us forever. And had that moment not happened, something different could have happened. Like it could have been something as long, for me, if I wouldn't have changed my mind to be a music major in a Hardee's, I would have never been a music teacher, because it took a realization and just thinking through things. But when it comes to making those decisions on programming, or how do you feel that journey started for you? Like, how did you become knowledgeable? Because when I was in college, this is what I'm saying. I started listening to the jazz band people talk repertoire, and it wasn't, you don't say repertoire in jazz band. It was that they just started talking about artists and all these things. Yeah. And I glazed. I had not, it was like they were speaking a complete different language, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And I will remember it because I was probably a freshman or sophomore in college at that point, and it kind of almost, speaking of the reverse moment, almost took me out of music because I felt like I didn't belong. But rather than take that journey of ignorance, I decided to start the journey of listening. And I don't mean listening to music. I meant just listening in general. And all of a sudden, those conversations that were just, they would talk, because they would talk about this solo, this group, sorry, it's old, that album, which became that CD. All of a sudden, one day, the language started to appear in my head. I understood who they were talking about. I was listening to those same things. And I kind of hear that same connection with repertoire. So, how did you assemble, or was it just how you grew up? Maybe talk about that knowledge presence you have.
I mean, we have a new, I don't want to say a new teacher, but a young teacher here. I think I'm trying to remember if it's Nico's second year. Here at Fisher's High School. Shout out to Fisher's High School, Chad Guller. Anyways, one of his new assistants is from a tremendous band program, William Mason High School, and he's really good friends with one of my current grad students. And one of the very first times we had a lesson, this current grad student said to me, he's like, Nico knows an unbelievable amount of repertoire. And he came from a really amazing program that played multiple concerts. It's like a concert band year-round thing, like always playing rep. So always playing rep. And so for me, I can tell you I had that same moment you're talking about in jazz. I went to Indiana to visit for my grad school interview, and I attended the seminar course. Seminar course is all the master's and doctoral wind band conducting students. And each week, someone or two people would present on new rep to the group. You'd have to give like a handout. It's like a format, give an analysis of the piece, talk about it, history of the composer. And then the next week, two more people went. It just was like a rotating door. And I remember walking into that class, and two doctoral students presented that day. Dr. Kyle Glaser, who's at Texas State University, and Dr. Will Peterson, who's at University of Southern Alabama. And Will was presenting on La Fiesta Mexicana by H. Owen Reed, which he was about to perform on his doctoral recital. And Kyle was presenting on a piece that he later completed a transcription on by Robert Russell Bennett from a movie. The name escapes me. Something with ships. Sorry, Kyle. It's published. It's great. And they were talking about this rep like, and it's like this piece. And, H. Owen Reed wrote this La Fiesta Mexicana at this time period. And in that year, these pieces of band rep were also written. And I remember sitting in the corner thinking like, I think I could name 5 band pieces. A part of that was nerves, but it was like, exactly, Victory at Sea. Nailed it. I thought, I don't know if I could name the contest repertoire that I played with my high school bands, like pretty quickly. Like that was about all I could get into. I mean, it's not because I didn't have that training in undergrad. I did, but when you're just not in it all the time, it's hard. It's hard to, or if you're only looking at, especially for groups that might play, maybe like a fall concert of lighter repertoire in high school, for example, and then maybe your Christmas concert or your January concert, sort of holiday things, and then you do your sort of contest program, and then you do your end of the year mix. Maybe you're doing a little bit of contest, a little bit of standard rep, a little bit of popular things. So you're not looking at like a block of rep to, for, like I said, 200. I'm essentially looking for 200 minutes of music a year. And so that just means I'm going through a lot. I mean, I just go through scores all the time. The students at Butler make fun of me because I tell them I don't listen to band music. And I don't listen to the music that we're playing while we're playing it, because I'm usually trying to listen to rehearsal recordings and there's just not enough time to listen to everything. But in the summer, I listen to a ton of different rep. I just listen to stuff that friends tell me about. This past weekend at CBDNA, the national conference in Fort Worth, I wrote down a bunch of pieces that I want to re-listen to when I'm not, 3 concerts in the day, and think if that's something appropriate for my group. And one of the things that's been so great about that, about just like acquiring this, this knowledge of charts and ideas, is that the more I get to know a lot of directors, the greater it has been to be a resource for them and talk about rep. Someone will say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about playing. And I might say, well, how's your clarinet section? Or how's this? Or someone might say, I really need a march. I really would love to teach something in 6/8. It cannot have more than 3 flats or it's over. right? And so I like, okay, let me rack my brain a little bit. And I've kept pretty good notes. Like I said, I have an Excel sheet that really helps. I make a lot of notes in it, sort by composers, those sorts of things. Or, hey, I need a multi-movement thing that's not really terribly long, grade 3. What would you play? I'm like, oh, well, I've got a couple ideas. What's the rest of the program? And so for me, it's really been about just trying to learn as much rep as possible, even if I'm not going to play it. There's a ton of stuff that I love that I don't know that I'll get to play because I don't know that it'll ever fit into a program for my group. And that's not an ability thing. It's more of like a timing thing. I don't know
Right.
that I just can't play 3 20-minute symphonies on one concert. So if we do one symphony a year, if we did one symphony on a concert every year, that means by students graduate, they've played 4. But there's probably about 16 or 18 incredible symphonies for band that just we won't get to. So yeah, so as far as like rep goes and like how I learned about it, it's really just a matter of like attending concerts and talking with friends. I mean, I cannot overstate the amount of help I've had along the way from colleagues who were either just a couple years further along than I was or who were in it with me. Friends that I met in grad school conducting workshops, in the summers going to do a conducting workshop at UT Austin or Michigan or UMKC. I would meet these people. And a lot of times I met I was meeting the same people in multiple places. And now they're like, I mean, I know them as well as some of the people I went to grad school with. Just this past weekend at CBDNA, talking about repertoire with colleagues, I mean, that I've never gone to school with. I just happened to spend, 3 or 4 or 5 really intense learning days with them that felt a little bit like a year. And now I can text them. I get to shoot them a text and be like, hey, I'm looking for a piece to round out this program. This is what I got. What do you think? And that's a conversation starter. So I'm really grateful for this community of music making. I think sometimes people get really I think can be hyper focused about like what the end result is, as you kind of alluded to in your intro, but also like what the end result is, not for just your program or your concert or your high school or your middle school, or your fill in the blank, whatever school but also be hyper focused on like, where will I go with my program? And for me, the Butler Wind Ensemble initials are BUWE, Bowie. That's what we call it. And every time I have the opportunity to talk about the word we, that's what I use. We need more people. At 25, we are not together. At 36, we are having problems. And I think that there's a community aspect of that. And I think that when I need help, they know I'm going to ask my colleagues. I have a group thread of friends from IU and a group thread from friends of Arizona State, that when I'm in a bind about a gig or a repertoire piece or a difficult situation with a student or a colleague, man, I am in those threads all day long, right? Or someone said that they knew some piece by this composer and I can't find it. Where is it, right? We have an opportunity to teach our students about music 100%, totally. But I think for those of us that work with students of any age for more than 1 year, 4 years in high school band, 3 years in middle school, like, we also have an opportunity to teach them about the culture of what or what could be the culture of our community, of our profession. It doesn't have to be, and I don't think it is very much anymore. I don't know very many of these people anymore. I know that, but it doesn't have to be, the only way to get to that next job is to, climb over someone or do it. It's like, actually, if we all just got better, band would just get better. I think that in our state, I'm thrilled. Eric Scott, used to be at the University of Southern Mississippi, is now at Indiana State University, and he's a terrific conductor, a great colleague. And someone asked me, aren't you nervous? Like, now that he's in the state, like, students will want to go there. I'm like, no, I love having great colleagues. He's come down and covered a couple rehearsals for me before and worked with the Butler Wind Ensemble. I want our students to know that this community is community before, the culture before content, to kind of lean on that idea, like that it's community before all else. Like I have nothing to prove. What are we doing?
Community is huge, though. Here's another sad statement. I mean, don't like making people sad, but my student teacher finished on Friday, and
Ooh,
It's one of those, I know. And so like, and when they're on quarters and they finish, right there, it's like, oh my gosh, now I have to get the whole quarter. But we were having this conversation about repertoire. We were having this conversation about learning. And then, she's in a weird spot because she is finished with the degree at the end of March. And so,
oh yeah,
I was, and I was talking about her and, trying to get a substitute license, we were talking about, you know, engage in the process. You're welcome to come back anytime and have with any group that you want to come just to get practice. And I was just thinking when you were talking about repertoire, I remember how I programmed my first 5 or 6 years of my high school career. And that was, I just went to everyone else and said, please help me, because I didn't feel comfortable enough to program. And it's still one of my weaknesses, even where I'm at, is sometimes I'll over program a lot of times in the belief of what I can do is not necessarily what my ensemble can do. And I get caught up
sure.
in that moment and I have to
Yeah.
backtrack. That's why I love talking to repertoire. And maybe we should have more people with shared Excel spreadsheets of repertoire so that we can see it. Because you also brought up an interesting, I love Renaissance music. Like if I could do Renaissance music full time, I would. I think that's just, I think a lot of my belief, I'm a saxophone. And his funny part is I listen to more romantic. I go backwards and I listen to all things not saxophone because I believe that's where my ear attracts to it at harmony and all these things that the saxophone, not necessarily about the saxophone, but it's just all that music that didn't enter my life until I found a way for it to enter life. I didn't get orchestra growing up. I didn't get a lot of these things, and again, like I said, I always say the jazz thing, but that's something I grew into as I got older, even though I was a part of it in high school. But I've now listened. Speaking of Hindemith, like Hindemith is like my all-time. Like if I have a playoff list, by the way, if I have work to do, they're like
Sure.
it's 3 hours of Hindemith in a row. And I
Oh, wow.
somehow when it goes on, Matisse de Mahler, when it's what was the other one that's on there? It just, I laugh because it starts. I can't put on Symphonic Metamorphosis because I will just stop and listen. But I just want to say, but you talked about the periods of music, but there's also what I think, a lot of things that for directors to learn about is also all the cultural things that we have now, marginalized
sure.
groupings that we have. And you got onto a little bit of that, but, and I think as a band director in high school, whether you're teaching at a small school or a large school, I think repertoire is really one of the cultures the culture of repertoire could be just a conversation for the ages.
Sure.
We really need to just to talk about, has time to bring up a piece. It's neat when you bring up a piece because I'm already on Google going, gonna look that up, gonna look that up. And I looked up La Cia while we were here. I looked up Victory at Sea while we were here.
Yeah, there's a ton. There are so many resources now. I mean, just to like a couple of things to just highlight, like big resources for people to check out. So years ago, the American Composers Forum did this series called Band Quest, and they composed. They sought to reach out to some of like the most important composers of our time, and to get them to write pieces for band that were accessible for school band. So like that's where Old Churches by Michael Colgrass came from, Alligator Alley by Mike Doherty, that's where Jennifer Higdon's Rhythm Stand, Libby Larson wrote a piece. People that were writing for Gunther Schuller wrote a piece that says grade 5, but it's like impossible hard. It's very hard. Alex Shapiro wrote Paper Cut, which then led her to, she wrote several other pieces for Winds following that. So that's a great resource. And I tell people all the time, there's a lot of rep on that page. I take a lot of things from there. Dana Wilson, Odysseus and the Sirens. Great stuff. Jody Blackshaw has a website called Colorful Music that's sortable by grade level. You can check out. She has a listing to tons and tons of composers, female composers especially, but there's a lot of different resources available there. You can search windrep.org for a lot of these different subgroups. You can try and find things. And so I think those resources, sometimes it can be overwhelming. I mean, let's just face the fact, like it can be completely overwhelming to program, as you mentioned. I always tell our students in the wind band history class, listen, I can tell how many years someone has been teaching. And I know you're a first year teacher when I sit down and your festival program is A+ March, A Song for Lindsay, and Apples to Apples. You never made it past the second page of J.W. Pepper. Like you started grade, and then it's an alphabetical, and all of your songs start with A. right? Like I know how overwhelming it can be. And that's why I think that, talking to people about stuff is so important. And if you're looking for something, I think that sometimes people feel maybe not embarrassed, right? But feel uncomfortable not knowing more about other types of music. I'll tell you, just ask someone. People would love to share more information with you about something. If you're looking for a subgroup, I'm going back to do the New Mexico All-State this coming year, which actually I don't know if I've said out loud in public, so maybe that's a
Oops.
drop right now. No, it's fine. It's perfect. It's all good. But I'm so thrilled. But I spent a ton of time on the program because I wanted to find a way to bring music that I've experienced that shaped the course of my career back to students in a band that started essentially my career where I started. But I also wanted to play music that connected with the rich cultures and history of the Southwest. I wanted to find things, and that took a lot of time. Again, there's more resources now than there's ever been before. Brent David wrote this piece called Grandmother's Song that's wonderful for middle school band, an indigenous composer, really cool music. And so I think just being unafraid to ask people for help. I mean, I know that my email address is posted up on this, but I will tell you that
We'll talk about
I
it.
know a lot of my colleagues have the same thought process. They would love to go on a deep dive for you. If you don't know Gateway Sheet Music, which was formerly Midwest Sheet Music, if you don't know
Mhm.
Jeff Gerard is a band music wizard. If you need something that's out of print, he will find it. If you need a piece for grade 2, less than 2 minutes, written by a female composer, preferably in the last 96 days, he will filter it out and find it for you. He can find anything. And so there are just a ton of people. There's so many things that occupy a band director's time. I think Bob Reynolds said this first, the longtime conductor of the Michigan Symphony Band, that if you don't let others do the things that they can do for you, you'll never be able to do the thing that only you can do for your group. Only you can study your score. Only you can find the repertoire that's most appropriate for your students. But if you need help with that, let someone else whittle down a list for you before you go into a music to publisher and you have 1,600 titles and you're like, well, I'm never going to get to this, so I'll just do what I already
But
know, right?
but Alligator Alley is super fun. Let's be honest.
Oh, 5/4, baby. If you got a bassoon, Alligator Alley should be on your program all day.
But I want to share a little story about something you said, because
Sure.
that's the neat thing about these things. And you mentioned Old Churches by Michael. The reason that became popular in my circle, and this is like what I want to share and share that with our listeners. Getting my students to honor bands has been very powerful for one reason. My students bring repertoire to me that I don't normally get, because if they're doing these honor bands, like I've got my kids are hounding me to do some pieces right now, and I've had like, well, can you just send it to me so I can listen to it? And we need to do a little Mexican suite, Mr. Duarte. We've got to do this piece. I'm like, okay, but
Oh yeah.
you're a senior and I've got 2 months. So maybe next year's band. But I'm just saying that Old
Yeah.
Churches, and the funny part is, like, when the kids, when kids are learning honor band rep, a lot of times they have, they're using source recordings to hear what it sounds like, and they did not like Old Churches at all. And then they went to honor band. And guess what happened? They loved Old Churches. If that's that part of that experience and knowing repertoire. But here's what I'm going to hold you to, because now that you get to become my best friend, is you can talk to me. I can come to you for this very thing, because that's where I get that. I think my next year is going to be built around what I have, not what I don't, because that sometimes when you overshoot, you get mad at yourself because you're like, we should have done better. Speaking of a grade 2 that you said it, Carol Britton Chambers, like she mentioned her Faith Eternal at me one day, and I just bought it like the next day and I used it. It was like the best freshman band piece, and it was so easy and hard at the same time, but it was so worth it. It was such a great piece to work on phrasing.
I'm telling you, Carol's music is terrific. You never have to fight against it. I've done her Cedar Canyon sketches about
I did that last year with my kids,
like
still
2 dozen times. Rusty Bucket and other juke joints. That's like my Molly on the Shore substitute. It sounds like Molly on the Shore. It's like same sort of jig type thing. It's not quite as difficult. It doesn't go on for as long. It's great. And this is the thing. Melissa was on here earlier. Dr. G, her and I talk about rep all the time.
She's
and I go to her.
IO. She's really the reason I played IO. So
yeah, I think that's the thing. We have to find people that have um, different strengths than we do. I have colleagues who know the repertoire so much better than I do, especially with um, the really complicated, difficult repertoire. If I'm looking for a piece, especially the big centerpieces of concerts I have colleagues that I will go to specifically for that. What are the big things? Here's my list. What am I missing? So I think, yeah, just talking to people about it and being unafraid to not know anything. I'll tell you what, I'll be the first person to say it. If I could go back in time to the fall of 2008 and re-teach that first year of my high school band teaching experience, I would do it in a heartbeat. I mean, there's so many things. Talk about learning. I mean, I was learning so much from those students. My first teaching job, doing Paris Sketches by Martin Ellerby with the top band it was a great band. They played just great. And so I think I've always tried to just be unafraid to ask questions and just be honest with students. Like, I don't know the answer, but I will try and find one for you. Or this is what I think. What do you think? Because I just think that's sort of our societal thing, right? I mean, what we're doing, the conductor's job, I think Carl St. Clair said this, the conductor's role is the last person on stage, first person off, the only person who doesn't make music, and the first person to take a bow. It's like,
This is
oh,
true.
that hurts.
That does
That
hurt.
hurts a little bit, right? Like, no, it doesn't make music. Only person that doesn't make a sound. Sorry, make that. We are making music. But only person
You
that doesn't
haven't
make a
heard my
sound.
shoulder. You haven't heard my shoulder yet because I didn't. That thing's like I got a ratchet going on in there. Woo.
But
All right,
these are the things that I think about. Yeah.
So I have the scariest thought of the day.
Okay.
We are already 56 minutes into this podcast, and I cannot believe the time just goes so fast on these things. And
Sure.
I do not like it because I guess I wasn't kidding when I said we probably have 65. If you want to talk band, that's the other thing too. I think all of us band directors who just want to nerd out. I heard from band. Here I is. Spring break. What's the first thing I hear from a band director on repertoire and festivals? I'm like, that's all I do all day long is just respond to band directors and enjoy. So, thinking about your final thought, thinking about culture. I mean, we kind of got on the culture of repertoire today and all these things, but it could have been anything. That's the best part.
Sure.
Just maybe give us a parting thought for the listener or for the watcher about just your thoughts on culture.
Yeah, one of the things that I tried to do, sometimes more successfully than other times, is each year, because we rotate the wind ensemble and the orchestra players here, I try and meet with the new students just for about 15 minutes and kind of get a picture of their background, get to know them a little bit, and tell them a little bit about what we do, sort of what we hope to be doing in the future, and ask them how they might fit into that, and just get to know them a little bit, and just to sort of provide that conversational point. So that's kind of like a piece of the layering. I also really believe my name is not Trae. My actual real name is Charlie, but everyone has always called me Trae because I'm the third. And I've had my name mispronounced 1,000 different ways, right? Especially first and last name is wild. So I always try and make sure that I know students' names. And there's a certain point in the semester where you can't go back. After about 2.5 weeks, you can't really tell a student like, hey, you, right? Like, so it's something that I really believe in for all of us. And people will say, I'm not good with names. None of us are. No one's good. Like, no one hears a name one time and takes a Polaroid in their face and knows forever. We just have to work on it. And I really believe in that. Like, to be able to call our students by name, to know a little bit about them. And I think probably the thing that transformed the way that I teach more than anything was having kids of my own, like my own children. Because one of the things that it makes me think about, and I think all of us who've taught in public school at any level, sometimes there will be a student who will just like completely ruin your day, or who's just got something going on, and I think a lot about it now. I was not good at it when I was younger. I think a lot about the way that I'm going to react, because at the end of the day, that person is someone's kid, and someday my kid's going to mess up. I mean, it's inevitable, right? We it's just going to happen. And I think a lot about what that response is. And so for me, no one ever made music. No one ever made incredible, beautiful, life-changing music when they were afraid. Like, you can't come to rehearsal and be afraid that, you're going to get just annihilated or a stand thrown at you, or these days are behind us, right? No one's throwing books anymore, but we've all heard these stories of, oh, back in my day, right? And so for me, when I think about the culture that we're building in the Wind Ensemble at Butler, is a lot about students being involved and invested, and I think that happens because they feel seen. I try and make sure I know everybody's name, trying to pick repertoire that each one of them will connect with differently. Some of them will hate someone else's favorite piece, and that's perfect. That's human. That's being human, right? Not everyone will have the same favorite piece. And then for me is the big component is, and now I'm seeing a little bit of this being at Butler. We've had 2 classes of graduating students now that I've been here. But going out to visit students' programs and watching former students' programs and watching them talk to students and be invested in students and program for students, not for themselves. I have a couple former students from Murray State who I talk to a lot about repertoire, who I'm just so proud of because they really believe in the mission, and then their students now believe in the mission. And I don't think that there's anybody that would disagree that creating an inclusive culture of all types of music and all types of backgrounds for students of all types of genders to see themselves and be heard in their ensemble experience. I don't think that there's ever a time that people thought that wasn't acceptable. It's just that now we're really talking about it. And when I see former students building those same connections and working on those same pillars and sort of like continuing to fight the good fight, like that for me is really like that's where I think of, did the culture happen? I don't know if I'll ever know in the moment, but I will know if I go out and visit them and some of these things are still happening with them. They believed in it. They might not tell me, just like your kids out there, your kids might not tell you thank you for the car that you bought them. They might not tell you, but someday if they do that for someone else in their own life, we'll know that we built the culture and that it sort of paid off.
Well, there's a last comment I want to mention. Encouragement can make an incredible difference. Love the comment, never making good music when afraid, from Stephen. Oh, I cannot say, speaking of last night, from Stephen.
I know
We're going to
Steve
say
Blanco.
Stephen.
Yeah, I know Steve.
Okay, well, I cannot thank you enough for being there. But before you go, let's get your email address out to everyone. It's tblanco@butler.edu. This is one of the easier emails from the last few weeks. tblanco@butler.edu. And your website is Trae Blanco, TraeBlanco.com. Great resources, but thank you so much. I am like totally like just dying to listen to repertoire and talk about it, because I am telling you, like, we all learn from each other, and that's how we learn.
Absolutely.
We learn by talking through it and processing. But thank you so much for being on the show today.
Of course, Eric. Thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Good luck for the weather. All right. We're so glad you could join us today. If you're watching, please also share it on your social media. That's kind of cool, because then we can get more hits. Yay. This is just a friendly reminder that you can explore our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or Facebook. We'd also love for you to stay connected with us at musicforall.org/podcast. You can reach me at david.duarte@me.com. And again, a big thank you to my cast and crew who helped me out and make this such a wonderful place. Thanks to Music for All and to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor. And thank you for being a part of our cultural today. And we will see you in April. And goodbye, and have a great week.
Maria.